Something was off. Not wrong, but different. The kind of different that makes you stop and look twice. The kind of different that makes 50,000 people in a stadium quietly turn their heads without knowing exactly why. Shohei Ohtani walked onto the field before the game against the Yankees, and the moment he appeared, something in the air shifted. It wasn't his walk. It wasn't his expression. It was what he was wearing. The get-up was bizarre. That was the only word for it. Not in a way that invited laughter. Not in a way that suggested something was wrong. But in a way that made everyone watching, players, coaches, reporters standing near the dugout, pause for just a second longer than usual. And in baseball, a second longer than usual means everything. This was not supposed to be a quiet day. The Yankees were in town. That alone carries weight. That alone changes the temperature of a stadium before a single pitch is thrown. There is something about a Dodgers-Yankees matchup that doesn't need an introduction. It doesn't need a narrator. The history writes itself the moment the two names appear on the same schedule. But before any of that, before the lineups were announced, before the pitchers began warming up, before the umpires took their positions, there was the matter of Shohei Ohtani walking onto the field in something nobody expected to see. He had received treatment earlier that day. That much was known. The Dodgers had not hidden it. There had been conversations in the hours before the game about how he was feeling, about what role he would play, about whether the night's plan had changed. Those conversations had not been simple ones. They carried the weight of a team that understood what it had in Ohtani and also understood the cost of mishandling him. And then he walked out. And the conversation changed entirely. Freddie Freeman saw it first. Or at least, Freddie Freeman reacted first. That is not a small distinction in a clubhouse where reading the room is its own form of language. Freeman is not a man who reacts to everything. He has been in this game long enough to know what deserves attention and what doesn't. He has stood in locker rooms after World Series wins and World Series losses. He does not rattle easily. But when Ohtani appeared on the field, Freeman looked at him the way you look at someone when you're not sure if what you're seeing is real. And then he did something nobody expected. He reached over and grabbed Ohtani's bat. Not aggressively. Not as a joke. There was a quietness to the gesture that made it more interesting than if he had made a scene out of it. He just took it. Held it for a moment. Turned it over in his hands. Ohtani looked at him. Freeman looked back. And then someone nearby asked the question that was already forming in everyone else's mind. Why did you do that, Freddie? Freeman didn't answer immediately. He has a way of pausing before he speaks that makes you feel the weight of what's coming. He looked down at the bat. Then he looked back at Ohtani. Then he gave the kind of smile that isn't really a smile, the kind that means something more than amusement. I just wanted to feel what he was feeling today, he said. The words landed quietly. Nobody laughed. Nobody needed to. Because in that small, strange moment between two of the most important hitters on the Dodgers roster, something true had been said. Freeman hadn't grabbed the bat because he thought it was funny. He had grabbed it because on this particular day, standing on this particular field before this particular game, Shohei Ohtani was carrying something that the rest of them could feel but couldn't name. And Freeman had tried, in the only way that made sense in that moment, to understand it. Let's go back to the treatment. It is easy to overlook that word when everything else around it is louder. Bizarre getup. Stolen bat. Yankees in town. These are the things that pull the eye. These are the things that fill the highlight packages and the social media threads. But the treatment is where the story actually begins. Ohtani had spent part of his day not on the field, not in the batting cage, not in the weight room. He had spent it in the care of the Dodgers medical staff. The details of what exactly was done were not shared publicly. That is not unusual. Teams protect that information carefully, especially when the player in question is the most scrutinized athlete in the sport. What was shared, what could not be hidden, was the timeline. Treatment. Then field. Then practice. Then the strange appearance that made everyone look twice. That sequence matters. Because it tells you something about Ohtani that no statistic can. It tells you that whatever was done to his body that day, he did not use it as a reason to pull back. He did not use it as an excuse to take the day slowly, to stay indoors, to let the team handle the pre-game without him. He came out in that getup that nobody had seen before. Looking like himself and not quite like himself at the same time. Moving through the field with the kind of focus that makes you wonder what is happening inside a person's mind when the outside world is watching this closely. Some players retreat when the pressure builds. Some players become smaller versions of themselves when the calendar turns to games that feel larger than others. Ohtani does the opposite. And that is what made this day so difficult to fully understand, even for the people standing right next to him. The officials' update came before the lineup was finalized. It was not dramatic in its delivery. These things rarely are. There was no announcement over a loudspeaker. There was no press conference called with 5 minutes' notice. It was the kind of communication that happens in back rooms, in conversations between managers and front office personnel, in the quiet language of baseball operations that the public only ever sees the edges of. But the substance of it was significant. How Ohtani would be utilized was changing. Not permanently. Not as a statement about his health or his future or his value to this team. But for this game, against these Yankees, on this night, the plan was different from what had been assumed. Dave Roberts received the update. He sat with it for a moment the way managers sit with decisions that have no clean answer. There is always a version of this that looks right from the outside and feels complicated from the inside. There is always a version where the numbers say one thing and the human being in front of you says something else entirely. Roberts had spent months learning how to manage an unprecedented presence. He had said as much in press conferences, in quiet interviews, in the careful language of a man who understands that what he has in Ohtani does not come with a manual. And on this day, the update meant making a call that would be questioned regardless of which direction he chose. Use Ohtani fully, and risk the treatment being wasted. Pull back on Ohtani, and risk leaving something on the table against a Yankees team that does not forgive restraint. Roberts chose the version that protected something larger than one game. And in doing so, he also chose the version that changed the texture of this night entirely. Back on the field, Ohtani was in the middle of practice. The bizarre getup had drawn its looks. Freeman's moment with the bat had passed into the quiet memory of the afternoon. The Yankees were somewhere across the stadium doing their own preparation, carrying their own weight, building toward their own version of this night. And Ohtani was simply working. That is the part that never makes the highlight packages. That is the part that doesn't translate easily into a short clip or a single image. The work itself. The repetition. The way he moves through a practice session with the same intensity he brings to the fifth inning of a game that is already decided. He took swings. He threw. He moved through the motions of preparation with a quietness that felt almost meditative. A few reporters who were permitted field access during practice described the same thing afterward without coordinating their words. They all said some version of the same sentence: he looked locked in. Not happy. Not relaxed. Not performing for the cameras that were never far away. Locked in. That is a different thing entirely. Locked in means the outside world has been reduced to background noise. Locked in means whatever happened in the treatment room earlier, whatever the official's update contained, whatever Freeman's gesture with the bat was trying to say, all of it had been filed away. All of it had been processed and placed somewhere that didn't interfere with what needed to happen next. Because the Yankees were coming. And Shohei Ohtani does not stay in the bizarre getup forever. He does not stay in the treatment room. He does not stay in the quiet of the afternoon practice. He steps into the game. And when he does, none of the morning matters anymore. Freeman was asked about the bat again after practice ended. This time, his answer was a little different. The smile was still there, but it was smaller. More private. Like something he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to explain out loud. He looked toward the field for a moment before he answered. Shohei went through something today that most of us haven't had to go through before a game like this, he said. I didn't take the bat to be funny. I took it because I wanted him to know we all felt it. Whatever he was carrying today, we were carrying it too. The room was quiet after that. Not the kind of quiet that comes from discomfort. The kind that comes from recognition. The kind that settles over a group of people when something true has been said plainly. This Dodgers team has learned something over the months of playing alongside Ohtani. They have learned that his presence doesn't reduce their importance, it expands it. Every player around him becomes part of a larger story. Every gesture, every small moment, every bat grabbed quietly before a game against the Yankees becomes something that means more than it would have otherwise. Freeman understood that. He understood it before the reporters in the room did. He understood it the moment Ohtani walked onto that field in that getup, after that treatment, carrying whatever the official's update had placed on his shoulders. And he did the only thing that made sense. He reached out and held something that belonged to Ohtani. Just for a moment. Just long enough to say, "We see you. We're here. Now let's play." The Yankees were waiting. The night had not yet begun. The lineup cards had not been exchanged. The national anthem had not played. The stadium had not yet filled to the noise level that makes your chest vibrate if you're standing close enough to the field. But something had already happened today that mattered. Ohtani had come through treatment and walked onto the field anyway. He had appeared in something nobody expected. Freeman had taken his bat and given it back with a meaning that didn't need a long explanation. The officials had issued their update and Roberts had made his decision. All of that, before a single pitch. And now the game was coming.